Kamlaji, people are becoming more and more conscious of handicrafts and handlooms. I don't know for what reason. Today people do many things because they are fashionable. But in your time, when you were a young girl, what got you interested in this whole movement? Was it an aesthetic feeling, or was it something politically motivated?
Very definitely aesthetic feeling. We must also remember that we were not tempted very much by synthetic things in those days as we are now. There was some feeling about the handmade things, the designs and the beauty and the charm and the warmth they brought into our life. That certainly had a tremendous impact on me. But you must also remember that we were not tempted very much by artificial synthetic things as we are now.
But at that time there were a few people who were making a political statement, were they not?
I dare say there were people who lived a more formal kind of life, wore formal clothes and things like that. But a change did come over the country and the community and the people. When there arose a sense of pride in things made in India, and the great Swadeshi movement emerged. And from then on, of course, the response to Indian-made things has been on the ascendancy. Well, the Swadeshi movement started almost from about the beginning of this century, and it was definitely politically motivated because it came in the wake of General Awakening and also the Bengal partition, which gave a new dimension to this whole question. But I would like to make a distinction between the use of Swadeshi, which means only Indian-made things, and handicrafts, which have an aesthetic value of their own. That is, those which have been made, no doubt for everyday use, but they also have an aesthetic beauty about them.
Kamlaji, as you know, we have a very rich oral and visual culture in which the appreciation of art is not a conscious process. Now, when did you begin to sense this? And what made you sense this? Also, how did you communicate this fact when you went around from village to village meeting people?
Well, as I told you, I was attracted by these things. I cannot explain why I was attracted. Why I did not take to the modernizing, for instance, of textiles or jewelry. I insisted that I would only wear the traditional items, the traditional designs, the traditional patterns. That is something that had a deep appeal to me, which I never tried to rationalize at that young age. But later on, it began to have more significance after I met Gandhiji. And when he talked about these things, or mentioned in his writings, that they really are part of our culture, that we have to live with these beautiful things. And that is what brings a sense of fulfillment, satisfaction. Then I think the relevance of those things to modern life came home to me when I went to Japan. And I found that such a highly modernized country could still have a very honored place for crafts, that they still maintained the master craftsmen. They still had the tradition of the Guru Shishya, the student who went to him, the pupil did all the jobs for the master, which has in a way long ceased to exist in India, except perhaps with some exceptions. There it was still followed, and those master craftsmen enjoyed a prestige which our craftsmen didn't get. I collected some of those crafts and I brought them to Gandhiji and I gave them for his museum. And I told him that I now understand how relevant these things can be even in modern living. And that's what we really should try and do.
Kamlaji, this innate sense of discernment, this understanding of the quality of handicrafts, this basic sensibility. About the young that we were talking about earlier and their attitude to this, why do you think they have started reacting to crafts now? What made them, and what do you think of their attitude to it?
Some of it is undoubtedly an impact of the influences of the West. The young people in the West are growing very weary of the high industrialization, too much of mechanization that seems to oppress them. And they want to get away with it in the most subtle, the most natural, the most beautiful way is to create things with their hands. And we find now that more and more of the younger people taking to creative crafts. They feel so stifled just by this elitist society, the high living, everything that is treasured because of the cost of the item, though it may be made by machine.
Yeah. But Kamlaji, I agree, but there is also a fad which is in using cheaper items, which is not a very positive feeling. I mean, you don't learn to appreciate these things for the intrinsic worth and their value, but more because it's become a fad. I mean, wouldn't you say that that was a negative kind of understanding of folk arts, of all the things that we now have begun to appreciate as true Indian culture? Or do you think this is a natural outcome? I mean, it has to be this way for some time.
No, I think after the First World War, so much of this mechanized stuff began to come in during that period. But after the Second World War, of course, the political situation here changed. And there was a great upsurge of patriotic feeling, which made us much more aware and sensitive to our own culture. Somewhere about that time, 65, 66, 67, one did notice that institutions and activities were getting more and more politicized. That is, people began to want more political position, patronage, power. The emphasis came more and more position of power. And with it came also almost an insatiable desire to have money. Money became very supreme. And that is the period when black money came into very lavish use. And because people had so much money, their taste began to get corrupted because they wanted expensive things, not tasty things, not beautiful things, but the rarer things which seemed to lend them a kind of social status.
The private export trade, which sort of boomed into the country, and indiscriminate use of all kinds of tactics and methods to promote Indian handicrafts we use. Do you think that was really what was largely due to the decline in the handicrafts and their quality?
Well, the decline was in the sense of values. People were not bothered about sending out items of prestige, but what would bring them the largest amount of money, and therefore the producers became indifferent to the quality. They wanted large quantities, and when quantity is at a premium, the first casualty is quality.
This question of quality I'll come to a little later, Kamlaji, but I just wanted to find out from you about the major handicap in this movement, the handicrafts movement. What was it? I mean, I agree, exporters, yes, was a big problem, but what were the other factors? Did the government assist you enough? What is it that you think that was really lacking?
There are many factors involved. One is, of course, the personnel that mans the administration. Our education is completely divorced of any element of our traditional culture. Therefore, we get a personnel who administers matters so vitally connected with the development of crafts without knowing anything about the crafts. I think the response came more because of the leadership of that time, which was very greatly influenced by Gandhiji and his own faith in these small objects, their production, their economy, and their important role in the Indian national life. I don't say that all the ministers understood what was being done, but they had a faith that what was being done was good and it should be encouraged and helped. But we find that coming towards 69-70, that also gives place to a kind of an assertiveness on the part of the establishment, that the establishment knows what is best. And therefore the task becomes more one of confrontation than one of cooperation.
Even in the field, one notices the same thing, Kamlaji. People working in the village level, in the district level, in the field of crafts, they're doing it as another job. To them, it's nothing special. And this is very disconcerting, because how do you communicate a crafts culture? How do you explain the values of working with one's hands? How is it that they can take their job, which is important for them, in a more sensitive manner? Now, how do we make it everyone's business to understand what this crafts culture is about?
That can only be brought about through children. The children, as they grow up, should be taught to appreciate, respect, and want crafts around them. That is, they must use things that are beautiful. They must be made aware, sensitive to. And I find it is very easy because children respond very quickly to beauty. And they also have an innate respect for things which the adults lack. So I think that the mistake really lies with our education, that it does not give any cultural bias and therefore no knowledge of our tradition or our sense of aesthetics.
So you feel if this was to happen, Kamlaji, then people themselves would be a watchdog, which is not a good expression. The people themselves would not allow quality to be compromised, and they themselves would be able to understand the standard of quality.
In fact, so many of our classical objects lay much greater stress on the correct lines and their beauty rather than ornamentation, which is supposed to cover up mistakes.
Do you think this, the Shilpa Shastra, for example, which the craftsman has not an academic knowledge of maybe, but he has an oral culture which is ingrained in him, every single aspect of this Shastra, can be made communicable to people working in this field, in schools and several other places also?
This sensitivity to beauty has really to start in the home. It is the children that should be made aware of it even as they grow up. The school is only an extension of that, and the school should mature this appreciation and give more body to it. That should be part of our education.
Kamlaji, you know, people of my generation working in crafts, their experience has been quite common in one thing, that, you know, when we've gone into the field and talked to craftsmen in very remote parts of the country too, invariably we ask them that has somebody seen you? I mean, you know, young people always think they've discovered something new, and we say, has anybody seen this work, and does anyone know about this work? And invariably they say, yes, one lady came here about 30, 40 years back, and invariably conversation drifts towards you. So the initial experience when you were going around and from village to village, from place to place, tell us about something interesting about, some few experiences that you had about meeting craftsmen in these parts.
Well, actually it was like a voyage of discovery, because we had so little mapping out of places. where you can just put your finger on and you go there. Sometimes one would drive perhaps 300 miles and not find anything. Sometimes perhaps just 50 yards and you'd stumble on something. Well, one of the exciting experiences we had was trying to find the places where this Babuji ka pod was being made. We had been told about Shahpur, and it took us quite a search, and we still had not found Shahpur. And then by some accident we arrived at a village which we discovered was Shahpur. And then we found that there were no people there making those Babuji ka pod. They said, well, you will have to go and find it in some other places. Then we went to a little bigger place, that was Bhilwara, where we did find some making this Babuji ka pod.
धीरे घरे जावे ते मरो बलम बलम घरे जावे ते मरो राजन घरे जावे तो तुम्हारो बलम घरे जावे उड़े जुड़े रे मेरा काला रे का गेला उड़ा उड़ी रे मेरा काला रे का गेला जदे मारो राजन घरे जावे तदे मारो पियो धीरे घरी जावे तदे मारो राजन घरी जावे तदे मारो बालम घरी जावे.
So that was one of the adventures that we had. The people didn't even know or couldn't direct us to exactly where these things were being made. We had even greater trouble trying to find the kalamkari of Kalahasti. Of course, everybody knows about Kalahasti, but we went round and round, driving around, but we couldn't locate anywhere anybody making this kalamkaris. I think we made 2 or 3 trips before we could locate an elderly man and his sister who said that they did know how to make, and that is how we came to set up a center in Kalahasti. Once when we were going to Nagarjun Sagar, and on the way the car broke down near a village, and then we just...
Often you had to go in bullock carts and things like that too.
Oh yes, very many times, because in the early 50s, particularly the 50s, there were not many roads. One had to go either on foot or in a bullock cart. Here the car broke down, and then we just walked on and we came to a little village called Durgi, which made very nice stoneware. Now in those days the Indian market didn't know, because now you find them in all the emporia, the Durgi stoneware.
Yeah, you know this Khurja thing, you were saying something about it too.
See, before this old Mughal art, the craftsmen were reduced to making electric switches and other commercial products, and they'd given up completely the hand painting. Isn't that so,
That's
Kamala?
right. That's right.
What about this Chanjoi that we have here, for example?
Yes, this originally came from China. This is a kind of a Chinese brocade which has been Indianized. That's the old Chinese and this is the Indian version of it. There was only one man left, 75 years old. And when we wanted to revive, the government said, how can we employ a man of 75? So it took us a long battle to get him on a contract. And we did revive it, as you can see now.
What about the other things, like all these other things?
Yes, this is the Jamdani, which after partition, of course, went into Bangladesh. But we did have some looms set up, and we were able to get this revived. These bell metal ones that are made in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, these were originally only meant as cooking vessels. Then in order to popularize them and bring them into daily use, we converted them into tableware. This is the real temple jewelry. We were able to borrow the jewelry from the temples and had it copied. So it's not just a name, but actually used in the temples.
And I remember, Kamalaji, you were mentioning about the Kalahasti, that how you went there and sort of revived this Kalamkari work here. It's interesting because most of these Kalamkari work that you see is inspired by most of from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And in fact, many other arts also have taken to it, like the theatre crafts. And then some of the craftsmen have been they make all the crowns, the headgear, the shoulder gear, etc. Tell me, Kanaji, the fact that some of these crafts that we're talking about now have faced a kind of, they were revived to an extent and then they faced extinction. Many of the crafts are dying out. So many of the craftsmen are without jobs. Young people don't want to take up the same occupation because working with one's hand doesn't have the same value, the same feeling as one had earlier. What can be done for them now? What do you think is lacking and what do you think can be done?
Well, I realized this a long time ago. The only thing one can do now is to get young people who are in schools and colleges to take it up. That is one of the reasons why I had this training institution set up. That is, we have now to concentrate on getting from the non-traditional families. If you go, I don't mean that we should bypass the traditional. We should make every effort to try and keep them, and that we can do by giving them facilities. That somebody is taking notice of them, someone is helping them. They are giving up, abandoning their traditional professions because they feel no sense of security. And they don't want their children to go through that period of agony which they have passed through. But if you can convince them through experience that they are being taken care of, that their goods are needed, that they are important, they are as important as the artists. It took me 3 years.
How? I mean, how can this be?
Oh yes, it can be done. It took me 3 years of continuous effort to have awards for the craftsmen, which now, of course, everybody boasts about. But in the beginning, it was difficult to convince the government that this is something that needed to be done, that you have to give a status to them. It's not only what I call the artists, studio artists, writers or singers, or performing artists, but the craftsmen are equally artists. Another way that could be done is to institute courses in the universities, give them the university recognition which is done in so many Western universities now. Then you will be able to give these craftsmen a place in those universities, because they should be the persons who would be teaching them. They should be the masters.
Kannaji, you know, these are the craftsmen who are really already, got their fine craftsmen. What about the rural craftsmen like the potters, the cobblers, the blacksmiths? These are the ones who are facing a lot of extinction.
Well, that was why the Village Industries Board was set up for this very purpose, that they deal with these rural industries, which we in the Handicrafts Board did not deal with. That was an exclusive sphere that was given to them because these are peculiar problems of the village and the life of the village. I can't say that all of them can be perhaps rescued for this traditional job, but some I think could be, at least to be able to meet the local needs. Now that is one of the Gandhian principles, and that's one of the things that the new regime should be able to try to follow, that the local needs be met as far as possible by the local craftsmen.
But they were being followed, weren't they? I mean, initially, there were programs for these things too.
They were, that is true. But I have, even in my time, come across villages where you don't find a potter.